Story. Chapter 1. Shattered Trust. William Steele gripped the edge of his mahogany desk, his knuckles white against the dark wood. The foster care system's file lay open before him, its contents stirring memories he'd kept buried for years. A photograph of two young boys, himself and Michael Thompson, stared back at him, their grins revealing missing teeth and the kind of hope only children could maintain in such circumstances. "Mr. Steele?" James Chin's voice crackled through the intercom. "Miss Grace is here to see you." William closed the file, tucking it into his desk drawer. "Send her in, James." Victoria Grace glided into his office with the confidence of someone who belonged there. Her designer heels clicked against the floor, each step measured and deliberate. She carried herself with the poise of old money, though William knew better. He'd done his research before their first meeting at the CyberShield conference. "William," she said, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed to transform the stark office into something more intimate. "I brought you coffee. Black, no sugar, just how you like it." He accepted the cup, noting how she'd remembered his preference from their brief conversation at the conference. "Thank you. I didn't expect to see you again so soon. Your keynote speech was fascinating." Victoria settled into the chair across from him, crossing her legs at the ankle. "Particularly your insights on pattern recognition in cyber attacks. I have some thoughts I'd like to share, if you're interested." William leaned back, studying her. Most people's eyes glazed over when he discussed the technical aspects of his work. "I'm listening." For the next hour, Victoria demonstrated not just understanding but genuine insight into his field. She asked pointed questions about his AI-driven security protocols, offering perspectives he hadn't considered. William found himself engaged in the kind of intellectual discourse he rarely experienced outside his immediate team. "You've clearly done your homework," he said finally. Victoria's lips curved into a smile. "I always prepare thoroughly for things that interest me." She glanced at her watch. "I should go. I have a meeting with the foster care advocacy group I volunteer with." William's attention sharpened. "You work with foster children?" "It's a cause close to my heart." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Perhaps we could discuss it over dinner?" The invitation hung in the air between them. William thought of Michael's words from their last phone call. "Not everyone has an agenda, Will. Sometimes good things just happen." "Dinner would be nice," he heard himself say. Later that evening, in a quiet corner of an upscale restaurant, Victoria shared stories of her volunteer work. William watched her gestures become more animated as she described helping teenagers aging out of the system prepare for college interviews. "It's not just about education," she said, her passion evident. "It's about showing them they have value, that their past doesn't define their future." William thought of the Hendersons, his foster parents who'd shown him and Michael the same truth. "I know exactly what you mean." Their conversation flowed easily, touching on topics from technology to literature. Victoria listened intently when he spoke about his company's latest developments, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite acknowledgement. As weeks turned into months, William found himself opening up more than he had with anyone since Michael. Victoria became a constant presence in his life, attending charity events at his side, offering insights on business decisions, and most importantly, understanding his drive to succeed. One evening, as they walked through a tech exhibition where his company was showcasing new security protocols, Victoria stopped by a display of their pattern recognition AI. "This is remarkable," she said, studying the complex algorithm scrolling across the screen. "The way it adapts to new threats. It's almost like it thinks for itself." "That's the goal," William replied, pride evident in his voice. "We're teaching it to recognize not just known patterns, but to predict new ones based on behavioral analysis." Victoria turned to him, her expression serious. "You're changing the world, William. Not many people can say that." He reached for her hand, feeling the warmth of her fingers intertwining with his. "I couldn't do it alone. Having you understand what I'm trying to achieve, it means everything." Their relationship deepened, marked by shared goals and mutual understanding. Victoria's presence at board meetings became expected, her insights valued. She never pushed for information about his work, but showed genuine interest when he chose to share it. When William decided to establish a foster care advocacy program through his company, Victoria threw herself into the project. She spent weekends helping to develop mentorship programs and educational initiatives. "You're amazing with them," William observed one Saturday, watching her guide a group of teenagers through a coding workshop his company had organized. Victoria smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "They remind me of you, in a way. So much potential, just waiting for someone to believe in them." That evening, he called Michael. "She's different, Ghost," William said, using Michael's old nickname. "She understands the work, the mission. She gets it." Michael's response was measured. "You sound happy, brother. Just remember what we learned. Trust but verify." "I've done my research," William assured him. "Everything checks out." "Good. Because you've built something important here. You need to protect it." William glanced at a photo on his desk, himself and Victoria at a recent charity gala, her smile bright against the camera flashes. "I know what I'm doing, Michael. This time it's real." The following months seemed to prove him right. Victoria integrated seamlessly into every aspect of his life, from business functions to quiet evenings at home. She never pried into sensitive information, but showed understanding when work demanded his attention at odd hours. When Richard Sterling approached them at a cybersecurity conference in San Francisco, William saw only an opportunity for expansion. Sterling Ventures had a solid reputation in the investment world, and Richard's interest in cybersecurity seemed genuine. "Your work in pattern recognition is groundbreaking," Richard said during their first meeting. "We should discuss potential partnerships." Victoria, seated beside William, nodded encouragingly. "It could be exactly what we need to scale the technology globally." William studied Sterling across the conference table. The man's credentials were impeccable, his business acumen well documented. Everything about the potential partnership made sense. That evening, celebrating the preliminary agreement with Sterling Ventures, William raised his glass to Victoria. "I couldn't have done this without you." She touched her glass to his, her smile radiant. "We're just getting started, William. The best is yet to come." He believed her. In that moment, watching the city lights reflect off her glass, William Steele felt truly invulnerable. He had everything: success, purpose, and someone to share it with who understood both. He couldn't have known that the careful life he'd built was already beginning to unravel, thread by invisible thread. Chapter 2. The Betrayal. The first hint of discord came during a routine security audit. William's AI system flagged an unusual pattern of after-hours access to sensitive company files. The timestamps coincided with charity events where Victoria had insisted he needn't attend, knowing how busy he was with the Sterling Ventures partnership. "Mr. Steele?" James Chun appeared in his office doorway, his expression troubled. "There's something you should see." William followed his assistant to the security center, where multiple screens displayed various data streams. James pulled up a specific set of logs, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. "I noticed this pattern while running maintenance checks," James explained, highlighting several entries. "Someone's been accessing R&D files during off hours, using executive credentials." William leaned closer, his jaw tightening. The access points traced back to Victoria's security token. "How long?" 3 months, sir. It started shortly after the Sterling Ventures negotiations began. William's phone buzzed, a text from Detective Sarah Martinez. "Need to meet. Urgent. Usual place." An hour later, William sat across from Sarah in a quiet corner of a coffee shop they'd used for meetings since he'd helped her crack a complex cybercrime case the previous year. The detective slid a manila envelope across the table. "You're not going to like this," she warned. "But you need to see it." The envelope contained photos, Victoria and Richard Sterling at a private resort in the Maldives. The timestamp showed dates when Victoria had claimed to be in London for charity work. In one image, they were laughing over dinner. In another, walking hand in hand along a private beach. "There's more," Sarah said quietly. "Sterling's been making regular transfers to offshore accounts linked to shell companies. The pattern suggests money laundering." William's expression remained neutral, but his fingers tightened around the envelope. "How did you get these?" "Remember that facial recognition software you helped us implement?" It flagged Sterling at the airport. "Standard procedure for tracking potential financial crimes." Victoria's presence was unexpected. William slipped the photos back into the envelope. "Thank you, Sarah." I owe you. Just be careful, William. This goes deeper than personal betrayal. Back at his office, William initiated a deeper scan of company communications. The AI's pattern recognition algorithms revealed a complex web of encrypted messages between Victoria's devices and external servers. James appeared with more findings. Sir, I've traced the server locations. They're routing through Sterling Ventures' private network. Get me Michael, William ordered, his voice deadly calm. Within hours, Michael Ghost, Thompson's face filled William's secure video screen. The years of military service had hardened his foster brother's features, but his eyes still held the same sharp intelligence William remembered from their childhood. How bad? Michael asked without preamble. They're trying to push me out. Victoria's been gathering intel, probably for months. Sterling's involved. Michael's expression darkened. I've had my people watching Sterling since you mentioned the partnership. You're not going to like what we found. Tell me. He's been running weapons through shell companies in Southeast Asia, using legitimate tech investments as cover. Your company's reputation would make perfect camouflage for expanding his operation. William's laugh held no humor. And Victoria? She's done this before. Different names, different companies, but the pattern's the same. She finds successful tech firms, gets close to the founders, then helps facilitate hostile takeovers. Sterling's her partner in more ways than one. The pieces clicked into place. Victoria's careful study of his work, her interest in his security protocols, her encouragement of the Sterling partnership. Every moment of supposed understanding had been calculation. I want everything, William said. Every detail, connection, skeleton in their closets. Already on it, brother. But there's something else you should know. Sterling's got a guy, Magnus Blake. Corporate fixer with a reputation for making problems disappear. William remembered the name from whispered conversations in boardrooms. Can he be bought? Everyone can be bought, Michael replied. Question is, what's the price? A knock at the door interrupted them. James entered, his face pale. Sir, there's been a breach. Someone's accessing the core servers. William ended the call with Michael. Lock it down. Now. They rushed to the security center, where screens showed multiple unauthorized access attempts hitting their systems simultaneously. It's a coordinated attack, James reported, his fingers flying over the keyboard. They're trying to override our security protocols. William watched the attack pattern scroll across the screen. He recognized Victoria's digital signature in the approach. She learned enough about their systems to know exactly where to strike. Let them in, he ordered. James's head snapped up. Sir? Let them think they've won. But first, activate Protocol Ghost. Protocol Ghost was a security measure William had designed but never implemented. A shadow system that would allow them to track and record every action while feeding false data to intruders. Sir, James hesitated. If we let them in, even with Protocol Ghost active, they could still cause significant damage. They already have, William replied, his voice cold. Now it's my turn. As they watched the attackers move through their systems, William's phone lit up with a message from Victoria. Working late again? Don't forget we have dinner with the Sterlings tomorrow night. William typed back a response, his fingers steady. Wouldn't miss it. He turned to James. Get me everything on Dr. Scarlett Russell. And James? Thank you for your loyalty. James nodded, understanding the weight of those words. She's a behavioral psychologist, sir. Specializes in corporate profiling. She's actually my sister. William's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Arrange a meeting. It's time to start building our own network. As James left to make the arrangements, William stood alone in the security center, watching the attack unfold on his systems. On one screen, a photo from the company Christmas party showed him and Victoria smiling, her hand resting possessively on his arm. He deleted it with a single keystroke. The William Steele who had opened his heart to Victoria Grace was gone. In his place stood a man who would demonstrate exactly why crossing him was a fatal mistake. Chapter 3. The Descent. The coordinated cyber attack on major banks hit the news cycles like a tsunami. William's phone hadn't stopped ringing since the first reports emerged. He stood in his command center, surrounded by screens displaying real-time data from affected institutions. They're using our own protocols against us, James reported, monitoring the attack patterns. The signatures match our proprietary systems. William's expression remained impassive. Of course they are. Victoria handed them everything they needed. He turned to face his team. Start the countermeasures. Protocol Lazarus. Protocol Lazarus was a failsafe William had built into his systems, a way to turn any attack using their technology back on itself. He'd never told Victoria about it, despite her countless questions about their security measures. Sir, one of his engineers called out. Sterling Ventures is calling an emergency board meeting. They're citing security concerns about our systems. Right on schedule, William murmured. He checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Victoria, 2 from Richard Sterling. A text message glowed on the screen. Will, please call me. We need to talk about the company's future. Instead of responding, he dialed Michael's secure line. Ghost, are you ready? My team's in position, Michael confirmed. We've got eyes on Sterling's operations in Jakarta, Singapore, and Bangkok. 1 word from you, and we start unraveling his entire network. Hold position, William ordered. Let them make their move first. The board meeting was set for noon. William arrived early, noting the nervous glances from board members as they filed in. Victoria sat beside Richard Sterling, her professional mask firmly in place, but William caught the slight tremor in her hand as she arranged her papers. Richard Sterling stood, his confidence evident in every movement. Given the current security breach and its impact on multiple financial institutions, we need to discuss immediate leadership changes at Steel Security Solutions. Interesting timing, William commented, his voice carrying across the boardroom. Considering Sterling Ventures' recent activities in Southeast Asia, Richard's smile faltered slightly. I'm not sure what you're implying, William. No. William pressed a button on his phone. The boardroom screens lit up with detailed records of weapons shipments, money transfers, and correspondence. Perhaps I should be more explicit. Victoria's face drained of color as she recognized some of the documents, files she thought she deleted from William's servers. This is absurd, Richard sputtered. These documents are clearly fabricated. Are they? William stood, commanding the room's attention. Because federal agencies might disagree. In fact, he checked his watch. They should be executing search warrants at Sterling Ventures' offices right about now. As if on cue, his phone buzzed with a message from Sarah Martinez. Raids in progress. Evidence exactly where you said it would be. Richard's composure cracked. You can't do this. We had a deal. No, Richard. You and Victoria had a deal. I just played along. William turned to the board members. You'll find complete documentation of their attempts to seize control of this company in your email, along with evidence of similar schemes they've executed at other firms. Victoria finally found her voice. William, please. We can explain everything. His laugh held no warmth. Save it for your lawyers, Victoria. You'll need them. The boardroom doors opened, and federal agents streamed in, led by Sarah Martinez. Richard Sterling, Victoria Grace, you're under arrest for conspiracy, corporate espionage, and financial fraud. As the agents led them away, William received another message from Michael. Blake's waiting to meet. Says he has something you'll want to see. William watched Victoria and Richard being escorted out, their carefully constructed facades crumbling under the weight of handcuffs and federal charges. The woman he'd almost married wouldn't meet his gaze. After the boardroom cleared, James approached with a tablet displaying news alerts. Sir, the story's breaking across all major networks. Sterling Ventures stock is in free fall. Good. William turned to the remaining board members. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest we reconvene tomorrow to discuss stabilization measures. For now, I have another meeting to attend. The drive to the designated meeting spot with Magnus Blake gave William time to process the morning's events. His phone buzzed continuously with messages from industry contacts, reporters, and concerned clients. He ignored them all. Blake waited in a private room at an upscale restaurant, his expensive suit and careful grooming at odds with the predatory intelligence in his eyes. He stood as William entered. Mr. Steele, Blake gestured to the seat across from him. I appreciate you taking the time to meet. You have something for me? Blake placed a sleek laptop on the table. Victoria Grace isn't just Richard's partner. She's his cleaner. When things get messy, She makes problems disappear. He opened the laptop, revealing files of previous operations. These are her greatest hits, so to speak. William studied the screen, recognizing patterns similar to what she'd attempted with his company. Why are you showing me this? Because Richard Sterling crossed a line. Blake's expression hardened. He's not just moving weapons anymore. He's selling tech, your tech, to people who want to crash more than just banking systems. And your conscience suddenly developed? Let's say I prefer my criminal enterprises with certain boundaries. Blake closed the laptop. There's more. Victoria's been building a fail-safe, blackmail material on every executive she's ever worked with. Insurance, she calls it. William's phone buzzed again. A message from Michael. You need to see this. Dr. Russell's research connects to our situation. Keep talking, William told Blake, his mind already formulating new strategies. The meeting with Dr. Scarlett Russell took place in her university office later that day. James had arranged it through his sister connection, vouching for her discretion. Your case isn't unique, Mr. Steele, Dr. Russell explained, spreading research papers across her desk. I've been studying similar patterns of corporate betrayal. The psychological profiles of the perpetrators show consistent traits. You've researched Victoria? Not directly, but I've studied cases bearing remarkable similarities. She pulled out a specific file. These individuals display a particular combination of charm, calculation, and complete absence of empathy. William recognized Victoria in every trait Dr. Russell described. What's your interest in this, Doctor? Academic, primarily, but also personal. I've seen what these people do to companies, to lives. She met his gaze directly. Your situation could provide valuable insights for my research. As William left her office, he received another update from Sarah Martinez. The raids had uncovered more than expected, evidence linking Victoria to prescription drug distribution networks operating through her charity events. Back at his office, William found James waiting with more revelations. Sir, I've been analyzing Victoria's communication patterns. She's been using the charity programs database to track potential targets, other successful tech companies with founders who match her preferred profile. Single, successful, with troubled pasts, William nodded. Makes them more susceptible to her particular brand of manipulation. There's something else. James hesitated. She's been accessing psychological profiles, specifically targeting individuals with foster care backgrounds. The implications hit William hard. She hadn't chosen him by chance. Every moment, from their first meeting at the CyberShield conference to her interest in his foster care advocacy work, had been calculated. His phone lit up with a final message from Michael, all pieces in place. Your call on how we proceed. William stood at his office window, watching the city lights below. The betrayal had been total, but his response would be equally comprehensive. Victoria and Richard had thought they were dealing with a self-made tech executive, someone whose past made him vulnerable to manipulation. They were about to learn just how wrong they'd been. James, he called, get me everything on Victoria's sister, Rachel Grace, and set up another meeting with Dr. Russell. We're going to need her expertise. As night fell over Silicon Valley, William Steele began planning the complete destruction of the people who'd thought they could break him. The foster system had taught him patience. Michael had taught him strategy. But Victoria and Richard had taught him the most valuable lesson of all. Never leave your enemies with the means to strike back. The first act of their drama was ending, but William was already writing the script for what would follow. This time, he would be the one directing the play. Chapter 4. Pieces in Motion. 7 years passed like a game of chess, each move calculated, each piece positioned with deliberate. William Steele sat in his renovated office, watching Dr. Scarlett Russell present her latest research findings to the board. Her presence commanded attention, her expertise evident in how she broke down complex psychological patterns into actionable intelligence. Corporate predators follow consistent behavioral patterns, Scarlett explained, her laser pointer highlighting key data points. They target companies with specific vulnerabilities, often exploiting personal connections rather than technical weaknesses. William observed the board members' reactions, noting who seemed particularly uncomfortable with the presentation. James Chen, now as Chief Intelligence Officer, discreetly marked names on his tablet. After the meeting, Scarlett joined William in his private office. Their marriage certificate hung on the wall beside his security patents, both weapons in their ongoing war. Thompson called, Scarlett said, closing the door. His team tracked another weapons shipment through Bangkok. William's phone buzzed, a message from Diana Fox. Sterling's meeting with Japanese investors tomorrow. Same pattern as before. Perfect timing, William replied, turning to his wife. How's the book coming along? The publisher wants more case studies. Scarlett pulled up a file on her tablet. I've been focusing on Victoria's early work, her time at Yale with Richard, their first corporate takedowns. The pattern was there from the beginning. Show me. Scarlett's research had uncovered Victoria's methodology in excruciating detail. Each company she'd helped destroy followed the same template. Find a vulnerable founder, exploit personal connections, then strip the company's assets through a series of seemingly legitimate transactions. James entered with fresh intelligence. Sir, Diana's report from Sterling Ventures came through. Richard's gambling debts have tripled in the last quarter. Excellent. William stood, straightening his tie. Time to apply some pressure. Get me Rachel Grace on the line. Rachel Grace's voice carried years of buried rage when she answered. William, you have news? Your sister's starting to make mistakes. The charity events are drawing attention from the wrong people. The prescription drugs? Among other things. How's the investment firm? Rachel's laugh held no humor. Growing stronger each day. Sterling's investors are getting nervous about his recent decisions. They're looking for alternatives. Make sure they find you. Already done. 3 major partners have scheduled meetings for next week. William ended the call and turned to Scarlett. Your research on corporate psychology, we need to accelerate it. Focus on addiction patterns in executives. Richard's gambling and Victoria's need for control. They're both spiraling. Time to tighten the noose. Diana Fox's consulting business had become the perfect cover for monitoring Sterling Ventures' operations. Her office overlooked Silicon Valley, its location carefully chosen to maintain appearances of legitimacy while serving their true purpose. Richard's getting sloppy, Diana reported during their secure video call. He's using company funds to cover personal losses. The board's starting to notice. William's expression remained neutral. And Victoria? She's losing her grip on the social circuit. 3 charity boards have quietly asked for her resignation. The rumors about prescription drugs are spreading. Make sure they keep spreading. Rachel will handle the fallout. Diana hesitated. There's something else. Richard's been meeting with Magnus Blake again. Expected. Keep watching them. And Diana? Remember why we're doing this. Trust me. Diana's voice hardened. I remember exactly what they did to my career. To all of us. The pieces were moving faster now. Each day brought new reports of Richard's declining business acumen, of Victoria's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain her social standing. Their empire was crumbling brick by brick, and they couldn't see the hands that held the sledgehammer. Michael Ghost Thompson's next update came through an encrypted channel. Will, we've got something. Sterling's weapons are moving through new routes. He's getting careless, using cheaper contractors. Casualties? 3 civilian deaths in Malaysia. Local authorities are investigating. William's jaw tightened. Give me everything. Names, dates, connections to Sterling's shell companies. Already compiled. But there's more. Victoria's been making moves behind Richard's back. She's setting up her own escape route. Of course she is. William pulled up his secure messaging system. Time to introduce some chaos into their partnership. A carefully orchestrated leak to Richard's private email revealed Victoria's separate accounts in the Cayman Islands. Simultaneously, Victoria received evidence of Richard's plan to blame her for the weapons trafficking if they were discovered. James monitored the fallout through their surveillance systems. They're fighting, sir. Victoria left their house at 2 a.m., checked into the Four Seasons under an alias. Good. Have Rachel reach out to her. Play the concerned sister. Rachel's performance was flawless. She approached Victoria at her regular spa, playing the role of the forgiving sibling perfectly. Vic, you look terrible, Rachel said, her concern appearing genuine. Is everything okay with Richard? Victoria's carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. It's nothing. Just business stress. You know you can talk to me. right? Despite everything, we're still sisters. The trap was baited. Victoria, isolated and paranoid, began confiding in Rachel about Richard's increasingly erratic behavior. Each conversation was recorded, each admission carefully cataloged for future use. Meanwhile, Scarlett's research gained prominence in academic circles. Her papers on corporate psychopathy and institutional betrayal drew attention from regulatory agencies and law enforcement. "They're watching us," Victoria complained to Richard during a bugged conversation in their home office. "That bitch's research is about us, Richard. Everyone knows it." "Calm down," Richard snapped. "Blake's handling it. He's found something in Steele's past, a security operation in Dubai. It'll destroy him." But Magnus Blake had his own agenda. The corporate fixer sat in William's office late one night, laying out decades of dirt on Richard Sterling. "He's crossing lines even I won't touch," Blake explained, sliding a USB drive across the desk. "Children died in that Malaysian village. That's not business. That's butchery." William studied the man who'd built a career on solving wealthy people's problems. "Why come to me?" "Because you're not just looking for revenge. You're looking for justice. There's a difference." As Blake left, Scarlett emerged from her adjoining office. "He's telling the truth." "I know. Have James verify everything on that drive. Then send copies to our friends in federal law enforcement." The pressure mounted. Richard's investors began pulling out, directed by Rachel's subtle influence toward her own firm. Victoria's social circle shrank as rumors of her drug trafficking spread through carefully placed whispers. Diana reported increasing chaos at Sterling Ventures. "He's drinking in his office, screaming at employees. 3 vice presidents resigned this week." "Perfect." William turned to James. "How's our stock position?" "We've been quietly buying through shell companies. When Sterling Ventures collapses, we'll own controlling interest." William allowed himself a small smile. "Rachel?" "Ready to step in as CEO once Richard's removed. The board's already approaching her about a potential leadership transition." 7 years of patience were bearing fruit. Victoria and Richard's perfect world was crumbling, and they couldn't see the architect of their destruction. But William wasn't finished. This was just the foundation. Chapter 5. The Web Titans. The evidence of Victoria's prescription drug trafficking emerged through a series of seemingly unconnected incidents. A society wife's overdose at a charity gala. A teenager's hospitalization after a foundation fundraiser. Each event traced back to Victoria's carefully curated social events. Detective Sarah Martinez built her case, each piece of evidence linking back to Victoria's operation. The network's extensive, she reported to William during a secure meeting. "She's been using the charity events as distribution points for years." "Show me." Sarah's evidence board displayed a complex web of connections. Society wives, tech executives, their children, all supplied through Victoria's exclusive gatherings. The drugs came from multiple sources, all carefully routed through legitimate medical channels. "We've got her suppliers," Sarah continued. 3 doctors writing prescriptions for fictional patients. The paperwork leads back to shell companies registered under variations of her maiden name. Williams studied the evidence. The charity boards? Starting to ask questions. Donations are dropping as rumors spread. Good. Make sure those rumors reach the right ears. Meanwhile, Michael's operatives tracked Richard's increasingly desperate attempts to cover his gambling losses. The casino connections led to a complex money laundering operation spanning multiple countries. "He's using the weapons money to cover his debts," Michael reported via secure video. "The Yakuza's involved now. They don't like people who can't pay." William's next meeting was with Rachel Grace, who'd positioned herself as Sterling Ventures' potential savior. They met in a private room at her investment firm, away from prying eyes. "The board's terrified," Rachel reported, satisfaction evident in her voice. "Richard's decisions are becoming more erratic. 3 major projects have failed in the past month, and the investors? Fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. My firm's absorbed most of their capital. We'll own controlling interest within weeks." William nodded approvingly. Victoria's response? "She's spiraling. Called me crying about Richard's behavior. Said he's becoming violent, paranoid. She doesn't know I'm recording everything." The next phase targeted Richard's weapons operation. Michael's team coordinated with local authorities in Southeast Asia, exposing the routes and shell companies one by one. Bangkok police seized 3 shipments this week, Michael updated. Singapore's investigating the shell companies. Jakarta's frozen their accounts. William's phone lit up with a message from Diana. Richard's in his office, drinking. He's called Blake 3 times today. Monitor Blake's movements, William ordered. If he makes a move, I want to know. Scarlett's research provided the perfect cover for their investigation. Her academic papers detailed the psychology of corporate criminals, drawing parallels that were obvious to those who knew where to look. Victoria's trying to discredit my work, Scarlett reported during their evening strategy session. She's hired academics to challenge my methodology. William's expression hardened. Let her try. Each attack only draws more attention to the research. The pressure mounted on multiple fronts. Victoria's social empire crumbled as evidence of her drug trafficking spread through Silicon Valley's elite circles. Richard's business decisions became more desperate as his gambling debts escalated. James monitored their communications, tracking the growing discord between them. They're fighting constantly, sir. Victoria's accused Richard of setting her up. He claims she's stealing company funds. Perfect. Time to accelerate their collapse. The next phase began with a series of strategic leaks. Evidence of Richard's Yakuza connections reached the Sterling Ventures board. Simultaneously, proof of Victoria's separate offshore accounts landed on Richard's desk. Diana witnessed the fallout firsthand. Richard destroyed his office, she reported. Accused Victoria of betraying him in front of the entire executive team. Victoria's retaliation was swift. She transferred millions from their joint accounts, leaving Richard unable to cover his next payment to the Yakuza. His desperate calls to Blake went unanswered. The fixer had chosen his side. She's running scared, Rachel reported after their next lunch meeting. Asked me about overseas banking regulations. She's planning to flee. William's response was cold. Let her try. All escape routes are monitored. The web tightened further as federal agencies began investigating Sterling Ventures' international operations. Michael's evidence of weapons trafficking reached key prosecutors, while Sarah Martinez's drug trafficking investigation closed in on Victoria's distribution network. We've arrested 3 doctors, Sarah updated. They're all willing to testify about Victoria's involvement. James brought more intelligence from their surveillance operation. Sir, Victoria's contacted divorce attorneys. She's gathering evidence against Richard, as expected. Make sure that evidence finds its way to our friends in federal law enforcement. The collapse accelerated. Sterling Ventures' stock plummeted as news of federal investigations broke. Richard's gambling debts came due, with Yakuza enforcers making their presence known at board meetings. Victoria's attempt to salvage her social standing backfired spectacularly. At a charity gala, one of her regular customers overdosed in the bathroom. The society pages that had once celebrated her now chronicled her fall from grace. The charity boards have all cut ties, Rachel reported with satisfaction. She tried hosting a private fundraiser last week. Nobody came. William's revenge plan incorporated each failure, each public humiliation into a larger strategy. Victoria and Richard's desperation made them predictable, their actions following patterns Scarlett had documented in her research. They're exhibiting classic cornered behavior, Scarlett analyzed during their strategy session. Richard's aggression is increasing. Victoria's looking for escape routes. They'll turn on each other soon. The prediction proved accurate. Richard's attempts to blame Victoria for the weapons trafficking led to a public confrontation at a board meeting. Victoria retaliated by leaking evidence of his gambling addiction to the press. The boards called an emergency session, Diana reported. They're voting on Richard's removal tomorrow. William's phone buzzed with a message from Blake. Sterling's desperate. Talking about leaving the country. Want me to stop him? Not yet. Let him run. The federal agents know where to find him. The final pieces of Act 2 were falling into place. Victoria and Richard's empire was crumbling, their relationship destroyed by mutual betrayal. But William knew their desperation would make them dangerous. They'll retaliate, Scarlett warned. My research shows it's inevitable. William's smile held no warmth. Let them try. Everything they know about us is exactly what we wanted them to know. The stage was set for the final act of their destruction. William Steele had spent 7 years building this web, and now his enemies were trapped within it, their own actions sealing their fate. Chapter 6. Countermoves. The first strike came through the press. Detailed exposés of William's classified government contracts splashed across major newspapers. Victoria and Richard had played their trump card, hoping to destroy his reputation before their own final fall. William sat in his office, reading the headlines with calm detachment. James rushed in, tablet in hand. "Sir, our government contacts are demanding explanations. The Dubai operation details are everywhere, right on schedule." William turned to his secure phone. "Michael, are we ready?" Defense departments prepared to issue their statement. NSA's standing by. "Your role in Dubai was officially sanctioned. We've got the paperwork to prove it." The media frenzy shifted as government agencies confirmed William's security clearance and the legitimate nature of his operations. Victoria and Richard's attempted expose backfired, drawing unwanted attention to their own international dealings. Scarlett faced her own battles as Richard and Victoria targeted her research. Academic journals received allegations of falsified data. Professional colleagues questioned her methods. "They're trying to destroy my credibility," Scarlett reported during their secure video call. "3 universities have suspended their participation in my studies." William's response was immediate. "Release the peer reviews. Show them your raw data. Let them see exactly how thorough your research has been." Rachel Grace provided additional support through her connections in academia. "I've arranged for independent verification of your methodology," she told Scarlett. "Your research will withstand any scrutiny." The attacks continued as Victoria and Richard grew more desperate. They hired investigators to dig into William's past, hoping to find weaknesses in his carefully constructed defenses. Magnus Blake watched their efforts with professional interest. "They're spending fortunes on private investigators," he reported to William. "Looking for anything they can use. Let them look." William's confidence was unshaken. "Everything they'll find has been carefully prepared." The investigation into William's past revealed exactly what he wanted them to see. A successful executive with a foster care background, whose rise to power was documented in public records carefully seeded years ago. Victoria's frustration showed in her attacks on Scarlett's reputation. She hired academic rivals to challenge the research, orchestrated negative reviews of preliminary papers, and attempted to block publication of the upcoming book. "Your wife's got spirit," Blake commented during one of their meetings. "Victoria's throwing everything she has at her, but nothing sticks." Scarlett's response to the attacks was to accelerate her research publication. Each attempt to discredit her work only provided more material for her studies on corporate retaliation patterns. "They're following the exact behavior patterns I've documented," she noted during a strategy session. "Their desperate actions are proving my theories correct." The pressure began showing in Richard's business decisions. His attempts to salvage Sterling Ventures led to increasingly risky investments. The board, already suspicious of his judgment, watched in horror as millions disappeared into dubious ventures. Diana's position inside Sterling Ventures provided crucial intelligence. "He's drinking heavily, making threats against anyone he suspects of disloyalty," she reported. 3 executives resigned this morning after he threatened to expose their personal indiscretions. William's network intercepted Richard's increasingly erratic communications. His emails to board members contained paranoid accusations. His calls to business partners devolved into drunken rants about conspiracies against him. "The board's documenting everything," Rachel reported. "They're building a case for his immediate removal." Victoria's attempts to distance herself from the chaos drew attention from federal investigators. Her separate bank accounts raised red flags. Her hasty property sales suggested money laundering. "She's liquidating assets," James noted during their morning briefing. "Converting everything to untraceable cryptocurrencies." William's response was measured. "Track every transaction. She'll lead us to her hidden accounts." Magnus Blake brought more intelligence about their desperate countermoves. "They've hired a team to hack your systems. Looking for dirt they can use against you and Dr. Russell. Let them try." William's security measures had been designed specifically for this moment. "They'll find exactly what we want them to find." The attempted cyber attack on William's systems triggered sophisticated honeypot protocols. Each piece of evidence they discovered had been carefully crafted to lead federal investigators deeper into Sterling's criminal enterprises. Sarah Martinez coordinated with multiple agencies as the evidence mounted. We've got them on weapons trafficking, drug distribution, money laundering, and now cyber attacks. They're practically writing the indictments themselves. Victoria's desperation peaked when she discovered her drug distribution network was compromised. Her attempts to warn her society clients led to panicked reactions that drew more attention from law enforcement. 3 socialites have agreed to testify, Sarah updated. They're talking about decades of prescription drug trafficking through charity events. Richard's gambling debts reached critical levels. His Yakuza creditors grew impatient, their threats becoming more explicit. Security cameras caught their enforcers entering Sterling Ventures' offices after hours. He tried to access the corporate emergency fund, Diana reported. The board blocked his credentials. He's completely cut off. Michael's team monitored their increasingly frantic movements. Victoria's booked flights to 5 different countries under various aliases. Richards contacted several known fixers about new identities. William gathered his core team for a final strategy session before Richard and Victoria's desperate endgame played out. Scarlett, James, Diana, Rachel, and Michael's holographic presence filled the secure conference room. They're cornered, Scarlett analyzed. All psychological indicators point to imminent catastrophic action. They'll risk everything on one final move. Rachel nodded in agreement. Victoria called me ranting about conspiracy theories. She's convinced everyone's betrayed her, even her private pilots and security team. Richard's no better, Diana added. He pulled a gun during a board meeting yesterday. Security had to escort him out. James pulled up their latest surveillance data. They're both accessing their emergency protocols. Multiple cash withdrawals, contact with known underground transport specialists. Let them run, William instructed. Every escape route they know about is compromised. Every contact they trust reports to us. Magnus Blake's final report confirmed their desperation. They're turning on each other. Richard's given evidence of Victoria's independent criminal operations to federal authorities. She's retaliating with proof of his weapons deals. William's phone lit up with a message from Sarah Martinez. Federal warrants approved. Surveillance teams in position. Perfect. William surveyed his team. 7 years of work comes down to this. Everyone knows their roles. The pieces were set for Richard and Victoria's final destruction. Their desperate countermoves had only served to dig their graves deeper, their attempts at retaliation becoming evidence of their crimes. As Act 2 drew to a close, William Steele watched their frantic preparations for escape with the satisfaction of a master strategist, seeing his endgame unfold exactly as planned. The stage was set, the actors were in position, and the final act of his revenge would begin without either of his targets realizing they'd been dancing to his tune all along. Diana's last report of the evening painted a picture of complete dissolution at Sterling Ventures. The board had called an emergency session, federal investigators were openly monitoring the building, and Richard Sterling's office had been stripped of all authority. It's done, she confirmed. The empire they built on betrayal is falling apart. William ended another day of careful orchestration, knowing that each desperate move his enemies made brought them closer to their inevitable destruction. The setup was complete. The web had tightened until escape was impossible. All that remained was to watch them destroy themselves in their final, futile attempts to survive. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The Tech Innovation Gala's security cameras captured each moment of the carefully orchestrated destruction. William Steele adjusted his cufflinks, watching the monitors as Victoria Grace Sterling made her entrance. Her designer dress couldn't hide the strain of recent months, the slight tremor in her hands as she grabbed a champagne flute, the too bright smile that failed to mask her desperation. "She's spotted you," Scarlett murmured into her earpiece, positioned across the room. Moving into position. Victoria's path through the crowd seemed random, but William recognized the predatory calculation in each step. She'd chosen her moment carefully, waiting until she had maximum audience for what she thought would be her moment of triumph. Still lonely at 45? What a loser. Her voice carried just far enough to draw attention from nearby tech executives. "Look at me, living the dream with your beautiful ex-millionaire." William's lips curved into a cold smile. Meet my wife, too. Scarlett appeared beside him, elegant and composed. The recognition hit Victoria like a physical blow. Not just William's wife, but Dr. Scarlett Russell, whose upcoming book on corporate psychopathy had become the talk of Silicon Valley. You. Victoria's voice faltered. Dr. Russell Steele, Scarlett corrected smoothly. Your case study made quite an interesting chapter. The behavioral patterns were particularly fascinating. Victoria's gaze darted between them, the implications sinking in. You planned this. All of it. 7 years, William confirmed. Though you made it remarkably easy. Your patterns were so predictable. You can't prove anything, Victoria hissed, but her fingers tightened around the champagne glass. Actually, Magnus Blake's voice came from behind her. We can prove everything. Victoria spun to face the corporate fixer she'd hired to destroy William. Blake's expression held no sympathy as he continued. The federal agents are already in position. Shall we wait for Richard to arrive before we begin? As if on cue, Richard Sterling burst through the gala's entrance, his usual polish replaced by barely contained panic. Victoria, we need to leave. Now. Going somewhere? Sarah Martinez stepped forward, her badge glinting under the chandeliers. Richard Sterling, Victoria Grace Sterling, you're under arrest. The other servers shed their disguises, revealing federal agents who moved with practiced efficiency to secure the exits. Michael Ghost Thompson materialized from the shadows, coordinating the operation through his military-grade communications system. The international warrants are active, he reported to William. Bangkok to London. They've got nowhere to run. Richard's face contorted with rage. This is harassment. My lawyers will. Your lawyers have already been arrested, Blake interrupted. The evidence of their involvement in your weapons trafficking operation was quite comprehensive. Victoria's social mask cracked completely. You bastard. I loved you. No. William's voice cut through her theatrics. You loved what I could give you. Power, position, access. The same things you loved about all your victims. Rachel Grace emerged from the crowd, fixing her sister with a contemptuous stare. Just like you loved our parents, Vic, before you drove Dad to suicide? Rachel? Victoria's shock was genuine. You're part of this? I've been part of this from the beginning. Someone had to help dismantle your precious social empire. The federal agents moved in, reading rights and securing handcuffs. Richard struggled briefly, screaming about conspiracies and setups until an agent efficiently subdued him. Diana Fox watched from near the bar, satisfaction evident in her expression as her former boss was led away in handcuffs. The board meeting tomorrow should be interesting, she commented to James Chin. Especially with Rachel ready to step in as CEO. Victoria made one last desperate attempt as they led her past William. I'll tell them everything. About Dubai, about your government contract. You mean the fully sanctioned operations? Michael stepped forward. The ones with presidential approval? Please, do tell them. William watched his enemies being led away, their destruction as meticulously executed as their betrayal had been. Scarlett took his arm, her presence grounding him in the moment of triumph. 7 years, she mused. Was it worth the wait? William's expression remained cold as he watched Victoria and Richard being escorted into separate police vehicles. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of their real punishment. The gala's other attendees huddled in groups, phones recording every moment of the spectacular downfall. Tomorrow, the videos would go viral. By next week, the indictments would be public record. The destruction of Victoria Grace Sterling and Richard Sterling was about to become the biggest scandal Silicon Valley had ever seen. And William Steele had orchestrated each moment. Chapter 8. The Fall from Grace. The headlines competed for the most sensational take on the scandal. Tech power couple's criminal empire exposed. Silicon Valley's perfect marriage built on blood money. Corporate psychopath. The Victoria Grace story. William sat in his office, watching multiple news feeds cover the unfolding disaster. Each revelation had been timed for maximum impact, each piece of evidence released to create an unstoppable cascade of destruction. The indictment just dropped, James reported, tablet in hand. 97 counts, including international weapons trafficking, drug distribution, money laundering, and corporate espionage, Rachel Grace entered, triumph evident in her bearing. Sterling Ventures board just voted me in as CEO. The company's being renamed Grace Investments effective immediately. Any resistance? William asked, though he already knew the answer. None. They're desperate to distance themselves from Richard. I've already initiated the reforms we discussed. The evidence against Victoria and Richard had been overwhelming. Magnus Blake had coordinated with law enforcement agencies across 3 continents, ensuring that no loophole would offer escape. Victoria's lawyers tried to cut a deal, Sarah Martinez reported during their secure video call. Offered to testify against Richard in exchange for immunity. William's laugh held no humor. And Blake produced the evidence of her independent operations. She's actually facing more charges than Richard now. The social fallout was equally devastating. Diana Fox's testimony about workplace harassment opened the floodgates. Former employees and associates came forward with stories of abuse, manipulation, and retaliation. 6 more victims came forward today, Scarlett updated, reviewing her research notes, all following the same pattern Victoria used in her previous operations. The prosecutor's office is adding their statements to the case. The tech industry watched in fascination as Richard Sterling's empire crumbled. His gambling debts became public knowledge, along with details of his weapons trafficking operation. The bodies found in that Malaysian village were linked directly to his shipments. International courts are filing separate charges, Michael reported. The weapons cases alone could put him away for decades. Rachel's transformation of Sterling Ventures drew positive press. Her focus on ethical investment and corporate responsibility presented a stark contrast to her predecessor's crimes. The stock stabilizing, she informed William during their weekly strategy meeting. Investors appreciate the transparency of the new management. Diana's consulting firm handled the corporate restructuring, identifying and removing Richard's remaining loyalists. The culture's changing, she reported. People feel safe speaking up about problems now. Victoria's attempt to salvage her reputation backfired spectacularly. Her social circle, already shaken by the drug trafficking revelations, abandoned her completely when evidence emerged of her role in manipulating her father's suicide. She tried calling me from jail, Rachel revealed during a private moment. Begged me to tell the press it was all a misunderstanding about Dad's death. Your response? I sent her the suicide note. The one she thought she destroyed. The one that named her specifically. The scandal sparked wider discussions about corporate culture and accountability. Scarlett's research gained prominence as other companies sought to identify and prevent similar patterns of abuse. 3 major tech firms have requested corporate psychology consultations, she told William. They're implementing new oversight protocols based on our findings. William watched each phase of his enemy's destruction with cold satisfaction. The 7 years of careful planning had culminated in a reckoning that exceeded even his expectations. Sir, James interrupted his thoughts. Magnus Blake is here. Blake entered, carrying a thick file. The last of Victoria's hidden accounts, he explained, placing it on William's desk. She'd been skimming from the drug operation for years. Millions stashed under multiple identities. Make sure the prosecutors get copies, William instructed. And the tax authorities. The evidence of Victoria's independent criminal enterprises proved particularly damaging. Her charity events had been more than just drug distribution networks. They'd been intelligence-gathering operations, collecting blackmail material on Silicon Valley's elite. We've identified 16 suicides linked to her blackmail schemes, Sarah Martinez updated. The DA's considering additional charges. Richard's attempts to shift blame onto Victoria in exchange for leniency failed when Blake produced records of his Yakuza connections. The Japanese crime syndicate, facing international pressure, had traded information about his money laundering operation for reduced scrutiny. They're turning on each other, Michael noted with satisfaction. Each new interview brings more accusations, more evidence. The tech media covered each revelation with increasing amazement. The story had everything: betrayal, crime, international intrigue, and the spectacular downfall of a power couple who'd thought themselves untouchable. William's revenge had become a cautionary tale for Silicon Valley. The message was clear. Cross William Steele, and your destruction would be absolute. Chapter 9. justice served. The federal courthouse buzzed with anticipation as the judges prepared to deliver their sentences. William sat in the gallery beside Scarlett, watching his former fiancée and her partner face the consequences of their actions. Victoria maintained her pose of injured innocence until the last moment. "I wish to address the court," she announced, rising in her prison jumpsuit. "I was manipulated by Richard Sterling. I'm willing to provide evidence." "The court is aware of your previous attempts to negotiate," the judge cut her off. "We're also aware of the extensive evidence Mr. Blake provided regarding your independent criminal enterprises." Richard Sterling, stripped of his tailored suits and executive bearing, slumped in his chair as the judge continued. "The evidence of your weapons trafficking operation is conclusive. The death toll in Southeast Asia alone warrants the maximum sentence. 20 years, Sarah Martinez murmured from her position next to William. "Federal time. No parole." Victoria's separate sentencing followed. The judge's voice carried clear condemnation. 15 years, plus restitution to your victims. Your manipulation of vulnerable individuals, including your own father, demonstrates a pattern of behavior that society must be protected from. As they led the prisoners away, Victoria caught sight of William and Scarlett in the gallery. Her mask cracked completely. "You destroyed everything I built." "No, Victoria." William's voice carried just far enough. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't take anyone else down with you." The aftermath transformed Silicon Valley's corporate landscape. The Steele Russell Foundation, established with recovered assets from Victoria's hidden accounts, became a leading force for corporate reform. The Whistleblower Protection Program is operational, James reported during the foundation's first board meeting. 3 major tech firms have already adopted our ethical compliance standards. Scarlett's book became required reading in business schools. Her research center, funded by the foundation, developed new protocols for identifying and preventing corporate abuse. "We're seeing real change," she told William as they reviewed the center's latest findings. "Companies are implementing psychological screening for executive positions. The patterns we identified in Victoria's case have helped prevent similar predators from gaining power." Rachel Grace's transformation of Sterling Ventures into a force for positive change drew international attention. Her focus on ethical investment and corporate responsibility set new standards for the industry. "The old guard is retiring," she reported during their monthly strategy meeting. "The new generation of tech leaders wants transparency, accountability." Diana Fox's consulting firm handled the implementation of these new standards. "Companies are competing to prove their ethical credentials," she noted. The Sterling scandal changed everything. The final piece fell into place at the annual foster care benefit. William and Scarlett stood at the podium, announcing their new initiative for children aging out of the system. "The Steele Russell Foundation isn't just about corporate reform," William addressed the crowd. "It's about protecting the vulnerable from predators who see their pain as an opportunity for exploitation." Rachel, now a respected leader in venture capital, served on the foundation's board alongside Diana Fox and other survivors of Victoria and Richard's schemes. Each brought their own perspective on the importance of ethical leadership. Michael Ghost Thompson headed the foundation's international operations, his military experience crucial in identifying and preventing weapons trafficking through legitimate businesses. "We're not just punishing the guilty," he told William during their secure calls. "We're changing the system that allowed them to operate." Magnus Blake, whose evidence had been crucial in securing the convictions, found a new role advising companies on ethical compliance. His insider knowledge of corporate crime made him uniquely qualified to prevent it. "Your revenge did more than destroy 2 people," he commented to William. "It sparked a revolution in corporate accountability." The story concluded where it began, in William Steele's office, looking out over Silicon Valley. But now the view represented something different. Not just personal victory, but systemic change. "Was it worth it?" Scarlett asked, joining him at the window. William thought of Victoria and Richard in their separate prison cells, their empire destroyed, their names synonymous with corporate crime. He thought of the lives saved by exposing their weapons trafficking, the victims protected by dismantling their networks, the changes their downfall had inspired. "It was never just about revenge," he replied. "It was about making sure no one else could do what they did." The Steele Russell Foundation's logo glowed on buildings across the city, a constant reminder that justice might be slow, but it could be absolute. William Steele had transformed his pain into purpose, his revenge into reformation, and his personal victory into positive systemic change. The price of betrayal had been high, but its consequences reached far beyond personal vengeance, reshaping the landscape of corporate accountability in Silicon Valley and beyond. Victoria and Richard's spectacular fall became a warning to others who would follow their path. Power built on betrayal could not stand against a man who had learned to turn pain into purpose. Epilogue. A decade later, William Steele stood at the entrance of the Federal Correctional Facility, his presence commanding attention despite the decade that had passed. At 60, his hair showed distinguished streaks of gray, but his eyes retained their penetrating intensity. He wasn't here as a visitor. This was the day Victoria Grace Sterling would be released after serving her 15-year sentence. "You didn't have to come," Scarlett said, standing beside him. Their marriage had grown stronger through the years, their shared mission of corporate reform transforming Silicon Valley's landscape. "Yes, I did." William watched the prison gates with predatory focus. "She needs to understand that freedom doesn't mean escape." Victoria emerged, her designer confidence replaced by institutional fatigue. Prison had aged her harshly. Her once perfect posture now showed the weight of 15 years of confinement. She stopped short at the sight of William and Scarlett. "Still monitoring me?" Her voice carried a shadow of her old bitterness. "Always." William's tone was clinical. "The terms of your release are clear. You'll be tracked. You'll be watched. One misstep, and you'll return to a cell. You've taken everything else. What more do you want?" "Insurance." William handed her a thick envelope. "Inside you'll find proof that we're still watching. Photos of your attempted communications with old contacts. Records of your failed attempts to hide assets. A reminder that your cage may be bigger now, but it's still a cage." Sarah Martinez approached from her surveillance position. Now a senior federal agent, she'd made her career on the Sterling case and its aftermath. "Ms. Grace Sterling, your parole officer is waiting. We need to review your restrictions." Victoria's release marked a milestone, but William's empire had grown far beyond mere personal revenge. The Steele Russell Foundation had become a global force for corporate reform, its whistleblower protection programs and ethical business initiatives reshaping international commerce. Scarlett's Research Center, housed in a modern complex in Silicon Valley, had trained thousands of corporate psychologists. Her methodology for identifying and preventing corporate abuse had become standard practice in major companies worldwide. "The latest numbers are in," she told William during their drive back to headquarters. "Implementation of our screening protocols has prevented an estimated $12 billion in corporate fraud this year alone." The Steele Russell Tower dominated the skyline, its architecture reflecting the transparency they brought to corporate culture. Inside, James Chun managed global operations with the same quiet efficiency he'd shown during the revenge plot years ago. Richard Sterling died in prison last month, James reported during their morning briefing. "Heart attack in the exercise yard." The weapons trafficking victims' families are finally getting closure. Rachel Grace's transformation of Sterling Ventures into Grace Global Investments had become a case study in corporate redemption. Her firm specialized in ethical technology investments, with a particular focus on supporting companies founded by foster care graduates. The latest fund raised $2 billion, Rachel announced during their quarterly board meeting. "We're expanding the foster care transition program to 15 more states." Diana Fox's consulting firm had merged with the foundation's corporate reform division, creating an international powerhouse for business ethics training. Her experiences with Sterling Ventures had shaped programs that transformed toxic corporate cultures. 200 companies through the reform program this year, Diana reported. 87% show sustained improvement in ethical compliance. Michael Ghost, Thompson's international security division, had expanded beyond its original mission. Working with law enforcement agencies worldwide, they specialized in exposing corporate-sponsored criminal enterprises. "The weapon trafficking routes Sterling used are dead," Michael confirmed during their secure weekly call. "His old networks have been dismantled. No one's been able to rebuild them." Magnus Blake had found his true calling as the Foundation's chief investigator. His network of informants and expertise in corporate manipulation made him invaluable in preventing new Victoria Gray-style predators from gaining power. 3 attempts to infiltrate major tech firms this quarter, Blake noted, reviewing his latest reports. All identified and stopped before they could cause damage. The patterns you taught us to recognize are holding strong. The Foundation's headquarters housed a special secure room, the Legacy Archive. Here, William kept detailed records of Victoria and Richard's downfall, along with evidence of ongoing monitoring of similar corporate predators. Singapore branch reported another attempt, James noted, updating the archives. Former Sterling associate trying to restart the old weapon supply routes. Local authorities shut it down within hours. Victoria's sister Rachel had transformed her pain into purpose. Beyond her success with Grace Global Investments, she'd become a leading advocate for mental health awareness in corporate settings, speaking openly about her father's suicide and Victoria's manipulation. The Foundation's mental health initiative has reached 50,000 executives, Rachel reported during their annual review. We're seeing real change in how companies handle psychological abuse in the workplace. Scarlett's book had spawned an entire academic field. Universities worldwide now offered courses in corporate psychological profiling, using the Victoria Grace case as a primary study in how predators infiltrate and destroy organizations. 10 years of data proves the model, Scarlett presented at an international conference. When we implement these screening protocols, corporate criminal behavior drops by 60%. The Steele-Russell Foundation's influence extended into law enforcement and regulatory agencies. Sarah Martinez now headed a specialized FBI unit focused on corporate crime, using methodologies developed from the Sterling case. Your templates have revolutionized how we track these organizations, Sarah told William during their monthly security review. We're stopping these schemes years before they reach the scale Sterling and Grace achieved. William's original company, Steele Security Solutions, had evolved into a global cybersecurity leader. Their pattern recognition AI, refined through years of tracking corporate criminals, had become the industry standard for detecting organizational threats. The latest upgrade caught a Victoria-style infiltration attempt at a quantum computing startup, James reported. The predator followed her exact pattern. Found a vulnerable founder, engineered a seeming coincidental meeting. The Foundation's foster care initiatives had grown beyond William's original vision. They now operated transition homes in 12 countries, specializing in preparing foster children for corporate careers while teaching them to recognize and resist manipulation. Your story gives them strength, Rachel told William after speaking at a Foundation graduation ceremony. They learn that their past doesn't make them vulnerable. It makes them vigilant. Victoria's release had triggered increased security measures across their operations. William had no illusions about her capacity for rehabilitation. She's already made contact with 3 former associates, Blake reported. All monitored, all documented. She's testing the boundaries. Let her test, William replied. The boundaries are absolute. The decade had proven the effectiveness of their methods. Corporate crime rates had plummeted in sectors that implemented Steele-Russell protocols. Companies caught attempting Sterling-style weapons trafficking or Grace-style psychological manipulation faced swift, severe consequences. The deterrent effect is measurable, Scarlett noted during a board meeting. When executives realize the level of monitoring they're under, most abandon criminal plans before implementation. Williams' revenge had evolved into a self-sustaining ecosystem of corporate reform. The Foundation's various divisions, psychological screening, whistleblower protection, foster care support, security monitoring, worked in concert to prevent the rise of new corporate predators. It's bigger than us now, Scarlett observed as they left the prison. Victoria and Richard were the catalyst. But what we've built goes beyond revenge. William's expression remained stern. Revenge was just the beginning. This is about power, making sure it stays in the right hands. The Foundation's latest initiative focused on artificial intelligence ethics, preventing corporate predators from exploiting emerging technologies. William's experience with pattern recognition AI had shown both the potential and dangers of the technology. The screening algorithms caught 3 Victoria-type personalities attempting to enter AI development firms, James reported. Their manipulation patterns matched her profile exactly. The Legacy Archive continued to grow, documenting each attempt to rebuild Sterling's criminal networks or replicate Victoria's manipulation techniques. William reviewed the files personally, ensuring that no detail escaped attention. 472 prevented infiltrations, Blake summarized in his annual report. 89 attempted weapons operations disrupted. 32 Victoria Grace copycats identified and stopped. The Foundation's success had spawned imitators, but none matched the effectiveness of William's operation. His personal experience with betrayal, combined with Scarlett's psychological expertise and their network of dedicated allies, created an unmatched system for corporate crime prevention. Other organizations lack our perspective, Scarlett explained to a group of corporate leaders. They haven't seen how these predators think, how they operate. We have that knowledge, paid for in blood and betrayal. Victoria's release marked not an ending but a continuation. William's network tracked her movements, monitored her communications, ensured she could never rebuild her power base. She'll try again, William told his core team during their strategy session. People like Victoria don't change. They just adapt their tactics. Let her try, Rachel said, her voice hard. We're ready. The decade had proven William Steele's most valuable lesson. True power lay not in revenge alone, but in transforming personal pain into systemic change. The corporate world feared not just his retribution but the transparency and accountability he'd forced upon it. Victoria Grace Sterling walked free, but into a world her actions had inadvertently helped create. A world where corporate predators found no sanctuary, where psychological manipulation faced institutional resistance, where betrayal carried consequences beyond personal revenge. William watched her leave the prison, knowing that his real victory lay not in her imprisonment, but in the system her downfall had built. The price of betrayal had become not just personal retribution but permanent, institutional change. The Steele-Russell Foundation stood as a monument to that truth, its global network ensuring that power, once corrupted, faced not just punishment but transformation. William Steele had built more than revenge. He'd built a legacy that would outlast them all. And somewhere in a federal prison, Richard Sterling's cold body served as a final reminder. Cross William Steele, and your destruction would be absolute, extending beyond death into the very systems you tried to corrupt. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.